that's way back. So,
Is that 2000?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, boss, do you want me to go then?
Sure.
Okay. So, good afternoon now, I guess, because it's 12. My name's Tom McLean. I've been coming down to the library for the past several years to give a little update or talk about AI. With year 2, this is year 3. Some of the slides will seem very familiar if you've been here before, at least in the beginning. There's more. There's always more. I changed it up, but in order for folks to kind of understand where we are and some basis, I did try to reinvent the wheel because it seemed to work last time. So the big part today as we get done is to have you reflect and maybe rethink or think about and reflect on what AI means to you and how it fits in. I think I'm adept enough that if we need to have conversations like we did here and you have questions, I will try best I can to answer them, and I will also be forthright to tell you that I may not know, and that's a learning opportunity for me as well. So with that, the first part is really that idea of how does it affect you and where do we see it. We talked about, and anytime you see this is my prompt to let you know also that you may have seen this. These folks have been here before. One of the questions is this notion of AI is going from being on the sort of fringe of technology now to as we pick up devices like we have up front here, very much part of what we do, and it's infiltrated almost all aspects of what we're doing in a variety of different ways. And I just left the conversation yesterday. One of the outputs or these takeaways, as we'll see here later on, is that it's gotten to the point now that it's almost become tailored to particular types of work that we may be doing or areas of work that now we can't even say this is kind of a chat GPT or this is how this works for everybody because it's so unique to what we're doing in that space that it's so individualized. So there's lots and lots of overlap. As I alluded to before, I look at this as going in with a beginner's mind. Every time I dig in and start looking at something, even yesterday, anytime I hear the term AI or be part of something, I always pick up something new. That's just because of the scope of what's there. And I would ask you, hopefully, at the end of this, with that, I would never say that I was an expert in this area. I'm someone that's challenged to do it because I sit on the ears of both the student world as well as the faculty world, as well as the staff world in my space. So it's kind of this mystic trinity of how do I do this to do the things, but yet why can't we do the things? Because we're a student. And should we do the things? Because there's the faculty saying, I hate when students do this and I don't understand why we can't do this. So it's a really interesting kind of conversation that's in the mix. At bottom, again, I love this slide. When we start talking about everything today or again discuss this, please just remember at the core of all of it is no matter what we're talking about in the various aspects of AI, we always have this idea of an input. We're going to process something and we're going to send out an output. And that is your sanity through all of this. And this should be nothing new. We've been kind of doing this for a long time. I mean, even if we go back to here in the library, whether you're using the Dewey Decimal System or the Library of Congress system, we have an input. We're going to put the cards in the cabinet back here. I'm going to learn the process to go back and pull the cards out and index all the information, and on our index card, know where the piece is to get the output of whether that was a paper or a research project that we have. And those rules are still the same with AI. As we start talking about AI, there's a lot of these tools. I'm going to break this apart for you. Artificial intelligence, or AI, has a lot of different facets to it, which is coming up in my next piece. But the ones that you probably have heard the most of are down here in the corner. So when we think about it, we have the Chat GPTs, or Claude, or Copilot, DeepSeek, Gemini, and Perplexity. That is only one aspect of what we're talking about in this world of AI.
Can I just get that photograph
Sure.
first names? Sorry.
Yep, and those are chat tools or assistants. And now, again, just wanted to make sure that you have those in, and then I'll break it down so that you can kind of understand why this is so big and so much scale. All of these within our year since I was here last have skyrocketed. Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. A little bit later on, I put in this talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're starting to face. But because of all of these services now charging a premium rate, before what was used to be a luxury, and this is really cool, is now becoming a barrier. Because what we're seeing is there's folks that can pay to have the premium versions of one of these or multiples of these, whereas others are not. And it's created yet another, what I know has been called in years prior to, a digital divide. This is a whole other access of knowledge. So with that, what is this AI thing? There are two big pieces here that we can look at. Machine learning, and that's actually the process where we look at information being put into a computer or the algorithms that put it together that actually creates and allows machines to learn. Okay? We have this other part in our space of artificial intelligence that goes into two spots, which we call along the idea of these generative AI, or the AI pieces that are most open to you. One is discriminative AI. Some of you are familiar with when you go in and you start typing away and you ask Grammarly to give you a response. That's discriminative AI. It's going out, it's looking for knowledge, it's looking at that knowledge and giving you a response. It would be the same if for us in this room, going back to the card catalog and saying, it can reply to us, find us the book. What shelf is that on? So it's very much, it's not creating the information or using it, it's just providing us a way to query it, like a search engine, okay? And why that's so important is many of our applications, as this whole idea of AI came up, that was kind of the gateway to a lot of this. The spell check in Word, the grammar correction in Word, those types of things fall into this category. The one that really bakes your noodle and gets folks all excited is this guy. And we talked a lot about this, and this is kind of why you're here, a little bit about around this notion of generative AI. And this is where what begins to happen is we start looking at what we know as knowledge, or if you get data, and these tools are able to take what's already there and generate and create new things. Hence the name generative. And that's all of many of the tools that I had up in that corner that fall in that are flocking through the news. So I'm going to focus most of the talk around generative AI, just like the question of data centers that happened, or even some of the machine learning. I'm not an expert in machine learning. I have a colleague that's what they're doing. They're training robots to be able to look at signs, be able to identify it, and then it can turn. So you can draw a picture, or even go as far as to, I could ask you to draw a picture of a dog. We can take that picture that you have, put it in front of the camera, and it would come back and say, that's a dog. And they're programming all of that. So with that, one of the big things, you'll have to decide this personally for you. The great question of, do you use ChatGPT? Do you use this? Are you use this regularly? I think that is one of the things that hopefully, with a little insight today, you can make sort of your own decision with it. And then the last thing, 2 slides that I think before I get into the new stuff. One is, at the end of the day, computers and a lot of the things that we do in comp sci are based around algorithms, and this is my second favorite slide that I used in the past, is the back of my day and how do we get information. So as we think about this, this has a lot of appeal, or some really important things for us when we talk about this spot of generative AI. Back in the 70s, I'm a byproduct of the 80s. I'm a Gen Xer, but I also grew up in the 70s, and my parents always told me TV was going to rot my brain, as mentioned before. We got into the Gen X, and I lived a lot with Encyclopedia Britannica, loved that to death. In the 80s and into the 90s, there was a whole movement that said we don't have any place to have televisions in education, and the mantra of kill your televisions came in. And then all of a sudden, we repeated and rinsed and said, now we're looking at the internet, and we went back to the internet's going to rot your brain, and what is this thing called the internet, and it'll never be useful, and why do we ever have it for knowledge and learning? At any point, we still have all of those things. And I think that's one of the other, as we think about, I just spent 2 weeks in West Virginia. I had the opportunity to work with a whole group of what we call creatives. 3 individuals from the New York Theater District, 1 individual that makes his living producing movies, and we were delivering programs for Scouts. Fantastic way to spend the week. They're very much humanistic folks. They will tell you they use AI to some extent, but they have a strong passion about that interaction, and you are all here because you're people folks. You work in a library, so that's a touch point. You like helping people with knowledge. Our librarians are still here hanging out because that's what they've been trained to do. They love books. You like the feel of the books. Maybe some of you like Kindle now, but suffice it to say, there's a connection, and I think a lot of those are still there. So, all of this was based on the need for speed, and we had this idea then of how fast can I get information from one place to another. That's where sometimes we may be challenged. So, as we started out with the idea of the data center, new slides, is this notion of what is the cost of this? So we start looking at the question about a data center. Is it good? Well, it may be. It may create jobs. It may create opportunities. It may be able to help us get that speed back. But we may lose the whole environmental piece in our world. It may also have some consequences to us for health reasons. And we have to look at what is the cost. That is no different than what we've faced in this area with this extraction in the past, when we look at the brickyards or the coal area. Same story, but now it's just different because it's technology based. And maybe we don't have a grasp on it because it happens in the black box. One of the biggest struggles, though, is this idea that keeps coming back in my space, as well as even when I'm having discussions with family members or colleagues or friends about AI, is what is the cost of us losing the notion of the process to only get the product. So the idea there is, let's say, if I'm someone that can take, and I play an instrument hypothetically, maybe it's a guitar, and you spent hours looking through the process of how to play the guitar and jazz chords, and you figured out how that works for you in that piece. That's really great. Right now, though, I can also pull that up and Google it and say, make me this chord progression with this and create this tune, and I get the product. Are we willing to give that up? Is there something else in this process that we're not willing to forfeit to get the end result that's here? And if I could leave you today with where we are, I think keeping up with it, this is the slide to remember. Because as we asked, do you use ChatGPT? Sure. So I like to learn. That's the way that sometimes I can say I get the answer to this problem that's complex to me. I unfortunately am a geologist who works in the field of technology, who's not trained in technology. I can tell you there's a whole lot of process that I picked up that helped me do what I do today that's not written in any helping friendly book. It's just the way that I'm able to learn. And I would not, even if I go and get the answer, I take the time to try to peel it off and say, do I really understand this? Could I do this again by myself? And more importantly, as we juggle this, what helped us, I would say in a variety of areas, not just, but for me personally as well as others, is this an area that I'm willing to invest my time in to completely unfold it? Or do I need to take another path that I already know? Do I go out for the new widget? There's a new programming language that comes out every other day. Can I get what I need done with the tools that I have? Or really, is this the greatest thing since sliced bread and I want to forego everything that I've spent time to learn to come up to rethink about how I do it. And that's the other spot I think with AI. It's super important for y'all. I used this one before because there are a lot of questions about this idea of generative AI, and then we're going to take a whole launch into where we are now. It used to be fairly easy, I use that term loosely, with these tools because one, we could take a whole bunch of information, we put it together, we put it in the process here, which we would put it in a database, and then we put an agent on it that allows us to say, hey, I have a question, and we type it in and it would give us the answer back. Just like we would with a chat when you pick out your phone and you're texting, whether it's your children, your grandkids, the guy who got drenched when he came to a presentation today, are you here yet? Whatever that looks like, makes it really easy because we can do this chatting. And for the past 2 years, that was really the end of the story. When we came in, first was what is this thing called a bot, and what is it with ChatGPT, and we got that out of them. And then last year was like, okay, well here's the thing, and now we can do this, and I think I left this slide in a minute, saying this is how it works on different places. However, oh no, this year the world's changed. So all of these tools now also provide us with 2 different things that we can use. One, before we were up here with the bots, as we see, which is just a chat style message. If there's any gamers here or folks that have done old school tabletop role playing, they refer to things in there as a non-player character or a player character. These are player characters. There are things that are engaged that we as a human have to tell the computer what to do. So we're going to say with a bot, we have to type the message and it gives us back a response. It's great. It's like, there it is. And then we can ask it another question based on the response that we can get. Pretty cool. But now, where we are today, we can also, in these tools, create a persona. Ooh. I can let these engines start to know a little bit more about me. I am an individual that is working in the Huntington County Library with 5 years of experience. My common audience are children age 12 to 14. What is the book, or I need to be the book, a person that recommends that reading to them, using the New York Times bestseller list. We've created then a persona that now when we ask the question, every reply that comes out will take all of that information about us. It's not really personal identified, it just tells us who we are. And it will use that in its response that it would give. So it might say Harry Potter is still the coolest thing out there. Or it may say no, because you're only dealing with this age group, it may be this other series. And it can tailor those responses based on the world that we've created. Pretty crazy. And also, it provides us with a sense of tone and also taste, saying if you're a particular individual, these may be things that you like because you've told me that this is the genre that you're aligned to. So just like when you're going out to Amazon and it's saying, here's things you may be interested in, these can now be able to do that as you're asking the questions. The next one that's down below is when we actually get this idea of AI to be able to do things for us. I'm going to spend some time here in a little bit to unpack this for you, but if you want to start thinking about what this may look like to you, oops, sorry, mistyped something. It's able to actually make decisions and go out and use the information that it's created from these pieces to make decisions. So it can actually start to advise or act on our behalf, hence the name of an agent. So I don't have to do anything. And this is the one that has really got a lot of folks outside the data centers concerned about what's going on, because what does that mean for the workforce?
Yeah.
And those types of things. So,
When you mention workforce, I just want to ask one simple question.
Sure.
don't you think that, or do you think the data centers will be no employees, they'll run themselves overall?
So the piece with all of that, and again, there's certain aspects of it, I can only speak from personal experience. I've lived through several folks that have come in and made a decision like we're gonna put automation in and monitoring for help for data centers, for computers. I still had a job. At some point, someone had to come back in and flip the switch. Someone had to go back in and correct the problem. I think what you're seeing now is with any of those types of things, as you alluded to, it takes a different degree of understanding what you're seeing as a preventative measure to go in to solve the problem. So again, it's a different level of, if you will, skilled worker, from the idea before you may have had someone that simply walked in and all they did is watched diagrams on a screen and they saw, oh, it's red, I need to call somebody to go fix it. That job of that person who would be there trying to watch that all the time is no longer there because it's picked up by that spot. And again, this is a really fuzzy area. I've also seen automation tools that do exactly what you're asking. At the end of the day, someone still has to write those processes to be able to say, here's the steps. If you see this, then do this. If you see this, then you have to be able to do this. And again, it's just a different skill set. So I don't know that it's a shift, I guess is what I would say.
Aren't doctors now starting to do this kind of thing?
And
Yeah, medical decisions by computer,
Yep. Hold that
insurance
thought.
especially.
And we'll come back to that piece here one sec when I get to not gonna avoid it. Great point, thank you. The last part that's really important, and this was where it was new last year, and this has continued to grow, is this idea of once it used to be islands of things. Now I can have, even here in the library, you could have your own little chatbot system working just for the Huntington County Library. But it would be able to share data maybe up to the Staten Learning Commons in our library. Or we could have things that could pass back here and it can traverse what we know as common network bounds. What that means is we can have corporate data that's housed here, that's very specific, all of those informations that we're concerned about, but still go out and leverage all of those resources that are outside here to pull it back in. And again, that's also a really huge area right now because many institutes are starting to say for the cost of what it means, because everything's going premium, why do I want to be premium when I can just do it here? I can build a thing but still benefit by pulling in data and having some of those parts, but still have the conversation that I need to within the area that I'm at. And I don't have answers of where this is going, I just know it's huge. A lot of booming. So one of the things I thought, great to the point where you asked earlier, is to try to walk you through this idea of an agent and why that's so important and where those kind of those boundaries come in. So many of you I grew up in a sales area at one point in time. I'm like a cat with 9 lives. So what I try to do for you is say, okay, here's something that may have happened. I'm a sales rep, I have a customer, I have a sales rep. When that sales rep comes in, they may not have all the answers. They would call the phone up and say, I need my sales team to come in and help you out. And then there you'd have somebody that did project. They were a project resource. They just would look at all of the current documents and what is the new things on the market, how does A go to B and C. They would turn that over to the pricing specialist who would then say, thank you, we have special pricing that came from the manufacturer, and here's what we would have. And then they would move that either into the engineer who would say, let me design this for you, or thank you for all that knowledge, but you missed these pieces, or we really want to put in here this nice cabinet because we bought and sold you a 3D printer, but you really want the place where you can store all of the stuff. That's what the engineer would do. You'd have the technician who would finally say, yeah, we can do all of this, and this is what the labor costs would be. And finally, at the end of the day, you'd have the person that actually delivered the right quote. So that, of course, then would get kicked over here if you're in some cases, and you would have the manager who would have to look at the thing, and after he said, okay, well, maybe this is a really good customer, I've got to go to the owner or someone above me to make sure that that's all approved, go through the process, and then, if we were lucky, we would get it back to the person. If not, once we got over here talking about some of the dollars and cents and what we wanted to do, they could kick it back, and it would be this never-ending cycle until we got everyone happy. Right? Resonate with a few of you. I see heads, nods. That's good. Well, in this brave new world of AI, an agent can take care of all of that. So instead of having the person or the people that are there, we could write a persona, or if you will, or a set of rules to the AI engine, to the agent, that will say, what's the context? Well, I'm a research agent, and my role in there is to go out and look at all the AV products, or all, I'll use what's in the room, all the 3D models that are out here, printers, to research those, to come up with what is the best practice, and the reason, the parameters that we're going to put around that are, we have to look at space, size, speed, and also how much filament that device is going to use, and that's how we're going to make it's the best product. We also can put some parameters or specifications on it that says, well, we also have to make sure that it's only a PLA type printer, that's a certain type of material in it, and we may want to say, instead of the machine that we have, we really want that to be enclosed. Those are some of the parameters that we put in, and then we can give it examples of either things that we've done in the past or other devices that we're like. And then we're set. And we can do that for each one of these and give them that set of rules and those narratives. And then this sales rep, instead of having to go through that whole team, can simply say, write me the quote. Go. And instead of waiting for maybe days or weeks, somebody's on vacation or somebody's out playing golf, whatever it would be, we're now down to seconds that it can turn around. And it's also smart enough to say, because we're going to tell it how to interact, if at any point we sense something's wrong, kick it back to one of the other agents. So this is huge right now. This is when you hear, as we started earlier, they're working in this field trying to figure out how do these agents make decisions, and that's the key piece here is these tools have authority. They are able to decide. Now, this is when all of you go, whoa, and you should. And if you have someone that is sensitive to this and also following along, you can also have put into these sort of escape, if you will, or show me what you're thinking and why you're thinking. Or you can build that over here so that it's, again, that persona that says, I want it to be think like me. So here's the decisions that I would make based on my preference. I would pick a Martin guitar, one, because they sound beautiful and they're made in Pennsylvania. I'm not going to look anywhere else. And I would go with a D30 because, or whatever that was going to be, because that's what we've traditionally heard for this style of music in bluegrass. And it just does my heart good to hear that lovely sound go out. And we can kind of bake that into this piece. The end result of that is, yes, there could be jobs that are lost. At the same time, if you have this savvy or that expertise, you've now become more important because everyone is trying to figure out what is the secret sauce that I can put in here. Who's my subject matter expert that I have to consult with to help write up the playbook to go and do it. So that's this agentic AI piece. And I don't know that it's moved so fast right now. There are folks that in my space right now that are writing agents. They're trying to figure out, can we do more with less? And some of it you can, but at the end of the day, we still have this that nature, if you will, or that call to say, I want to talk to a human. And they'll seek that out. I just left a session with a young lady who I got to play one of my favorite roles in my job, college dad. And got to advise, got to help out. She is not going to go to an AI piece to get the response that she got from the conversation I left. However, she may go to that if it says, I am a person that wants to go into this POE or this degree, and I would like to know what are the topics that I want to have.
I can sort of see this like when you're talking about pieces of furniture.
Oh yeah,
If I'm at a conference and I'm talking to a sales rep,
sure.
and he can ask me all these questions about my library, and then say, oh, this is a piece of furniture that would work best there. But to Rose's point, if you're working with a doctor,
Yep.
and he's going solely on that,
So the piece here that I think is interesting, because I heard, I've not seen this, but I've just vicariously lived through someone. What they're using that for is to be the stenographer in the back. So if you think about what would go on, I'm one of those people that, luckily, my job is very energetic. I don't know what I'm going to do until I walk in. So it is that dynamic that, who knows? Yesterday, my whole day was clear. I can tell you within one luncheon, my whole calendar got filled up. Oh, you're alive. You're back. Great. I missed you. Fantastic. Doctors are no exception. And I think a lot of those folks, I grew up in a medical family. My grandfather, many of my family were local doctors here. One of them was one of the traveling doctors that drove from the cultural mecca of New Granada into Cassville, over into Mount Union, that whole 9 yards. They did not stop thinking. Right? They were always thinking about that case, that practice, what's the next thing. My grandfather never stopped learning, gift to me. And in that case, if you could imagine that doctor coming in to focus with you, and meanwhile, he had this other, maybe it's a terminal patient that he was dealing with, and his mind isn't there. I could see where you might be able to miss a few things. So what's the AI piece is actually doing is he or she, they, can focus on you sitting in the room saying, how do you feel today? Oh, well, when did you first see that? Or when did you see that? Oh, was it inflammation? How big was the inflammation? And they can just talk to you. It's recording that, maybe not as much giving you the answer, but it's summarizing that piece of those key parts that they may not have picked up. It's like a second set of ears, so that they can actually diagnose better. Because if you just relied on that sense of only hearing the words, there's a whole block of things that may be missed. Or, ideally, there could be research that's available, depending on how it's plugged in, that as they're talking and they're hearing those, have you thought about this? Or is it this other case that we could correlate to? Or, just down the road, right where this person lives, especially in our area, we've got to drive a long way. Hopewell is not a real big blurb on the information superhighway. So maybe there's a condition that's unique to there, since we talked about extraction. Maybe it's tied to coal mining or practice that did there, or fracking, or there was something that was going on, and all of a sudden there's a density of people. I never knew that. Because I'm 2 hours away or 3 hours away, and I don't know enough about the local area. So I think there's, from a philosophical, that's the reason where it's picked up and why it's so important. Now, I also side with you of what's the reality of the practice. Is it really giving the diagnosis? Is it going through that? I can't answer that, but that's where a lot of the hope is that idea of, can I use that to record? We see students using it, likewise, to summarize lectures. Oftentimes now, when people go into a meeting, and I'm totally this person, I don't use it, but I've got a lot going on when I'm sitting watching a Zoom call. I miss a lot of stuff. I'm just saying. So a lot of folks have turned to these AI engines to be able to be personal secretary to kind of give them a summary. Did I miss the things that I thought so? I clocked in at about 600 emails just in my work email for being away for a week. My prior job, I had 14,440 when I came back after a 10-day, 12-day backpacking trip where I was off the grid. Did I miss things? I undoubtedly did. That's a whole lot of information to go through. Was it important to somebody? I guarantee you. Was it important to me at that part of time? Probably not so much. And that's where AI is starting to help with some of those pieces along the way to try. I hope that answers the question as best I can. I don't want to be the naysayer, and it's good. But again, if we go back to this, even when we look at our sales, if we only care about the product and sales metrics, then you know what? AI might be for you. Because I can crank out the number of quotes that I can, the number of contacts, gives you more space to call more people, to do more things, and just say hi. Tick, 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 tick. However, if my business is predicated or founded on the process, I really want all of my employees to know what it is they're selling, how it works, and how that customer can benefit. Maybe this isn't such a good spot. Just as you said, your small library, you're here. You know what? You're dealing with a lot of folks in this area. Maybe those low Cushing plush seats that you want to have, not so good. There are things I'm getting to the age now in the college, can never sit in them because if I sat down, I wouldn't get back out. I would just kind of roll out and do the thing. Knowing the audience, that might be a huge part. Likewise, the other piece is, what is the management and the skills that you want that person to have? Are you vested in your employees getting better? I'm going to have you start here. It's sort of that master apprentice part. I want you to learn how to do the piece, to learn how to do the trade, to build it into this. And the greatest gift of any teacher is to have a student exceed your ability. If you're in that mantra, there's not a whole lot of space over here just to get it done and check it off. It's all about that process of teaching that artistry, if you will, the art of learning. So again, I don't know, some cases, yeah, I can tell you for me, I do throwaway stuff all the time. I'm gonna put a sign up, a digital signage piece, I don't really need it, I'm gonna run it one time to say, come to our training. Do I use Canva? Absolutely. Do I use Adobe and Firefly AI? Probably. If I'm going to build out, I just left the thing where I'm doing a training coming up, the graphic for it, that I need to know that it needs to have teeth, it's important. I spent hours doing it because I wanted it to be that way. It matters to me, it matters to the organization. So a couple really quick things here for you, the challenges that are here, and then I also have time, I think I have time set out for you that I can go and show you some of the stuff again. I didn't know who I was going to come into. I did that last time and we had a kind of a mic drop moment with some of the AI things. I'm happy to do that for you. Used this last time, but it really comes in as what is truth anymore, and where do you go to find that? Cannot, been having this slide for years. I know when I do class, this is one of the pieces that I have students think about it. Did a course right after I did this, looking at one of the books that was selected, I adopted the course. The author was describing his experience where he thought he was picking his own music style and his own music taste, only to come to the realization that it was actually the AI, the algorithm, if you will, in this case, that was suggesting to him through Spotify, based on all his pre-existing listening, that this is the thing that he should listen to. And he unconsciously never came to the awareness that this band that he thought that he found was actually found by that liking, that AI, and that piece. The joke is, a student in that class actually had the same exact identical experience as the author and went through the same steps to come up to the same means. And I think that's a really interesting spot there. So hold that, because I have another slide coming up. One of the new things is a language barrier. This is hot off the presses. I just stumbled across, as of few days ago, and you can see that this is pretty new. Our use of AI, or at least our use or the use of AI, has come into the idea that the fact, if you will, that we all can write. We all can use the written language. English has now become the proficiency of the workforce infrastructure. Part of the problem is because we've not really focused on that English, those English skills as an art, we've lost almost the art of writing. That has a huge impact when we rely on these chat agents, because remember, someone has to tell them the process, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if we have someone that's not proficient with the English language, more specifically, the written English language, it doesn't work. It gives me the wrong answers. So this is a huge piece. If you're curious, I'll give the slides to y'all that you can have them down. This is a very interesting read along the way. It's almost scary that 90% of the world outside here is focused on English skills, proficiency, or becoming up with that, because we've lost not only this next slide, a cognitive decline, but also the use of language. We're losing words. We're using the ability. I think I'm safe in saying that everyone in here has gone through the process of diagramming sentences. You may have flashbacks along the way.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah. We don't do that anymore.
I do it in my brain still.
Well, I do it in my brain. And thank goodness for Mrs. Painter,
I
7th
know.
grade. I remember Never Let It Go. I can see the book. I can see the class. I
Mr.
can see the
Davis.
board. Never forget it. That's gone from our curriculum of today. So that even the concepts of being able to construct the noun, the verb, the adjective, the adverb, because we've lost that, we've also lost the words, or the ability to put those words together. And that's a scary spot, just saying, and that's where it comes back into the impact of this use of AI. The last one, again, I was talking with a colleague, as I mentioned, was out at a gig doing some scouting stuff. His business is working in the theater world. Very humanistic, very personal, and one of the things that we had at dinner came across this idea of the man. So it's just kind of meh. It's not out here exciting, it's not really bad, it's just kind of meh. So when we think about this, trying to think what's the best example other than the graphic that I'm going to come up. If you're familiar with love this film, 12 Angry Men, way back in, the question, are you the juror of the 11 or are you the one? He says, no, I don't believe it. And why we see that and why that's so important in our world of AI is we have the eclectic person over here going one that's challenging this notion of AI. Because remember, AI again is going to take an approximation. What do the 10,000 other people say? Or the 12,000? Or the 100,000? Because that gives us our direct line of truth. The impact of that is the flattening. So what we feel is our taste may not really be our taste anymore because we're just riding the coattails of all of these other people that AI is giving us the suggestion for. We may want to be here with the one. I want to be the one that thinks differently, thinks creatively, and I'm not going to settle for that status quo. And this is a huge spot right now within education and what we're dealing with, and also in the idea of creativity, because as we talked about and we can demonstrate, I easily can pull up Canva or Firefly and type in a word, and it can draw a picture for me. It's good. I can have my own personal designer with no design experience whatsoever to come up and build me until you run into a designer that's over here. And they immediately are going to tell you, no, you use this, here's why this doesn't work, and I'm sorry that you pulled it out, because that's their passion or their thought. So the last part, some of you here before, same QR code, same resources, I can do that. And then I also have a section here that I'm happy to pull up some stuff, answer any more questions that you have, and here's all the gig for today's speak, where you can find me, and also the resources that we had from before. So that is your update for now. I think synopsis is.
What about like the data centers and how like, I don't know, I've been reading stuff that,
Sure.
he keeps telling me to stop reading all the stuff that I'm reading. that like England is like, they're selling off farmland to build data centers. And there's people, at least the ones that I see online, that are getting worried about if there's ever like another world war, how is that island gonna feed itself?
Yeah, sure. And I think that's goes back to right here, way back when. And I'll play Irish and answer your question with a question because this is what I do.
Yeah.
What's the cost? So having an advisor that grew up in Ireland, interesting dude. So he loved the States because it was one of the few times where he got to see trees.
You got to be what?
Got to see trees. If you think about Ireland, they deforested the entire country of Ireland for the Industrial Revolution. In his experience, he didn't have green. So this is the question why I think the UK specifically is so in tune to that, because they made a lot of mistakes with all of their Industrial Revolution pieces, what they were doing throughout, and they put that forefront of industry up front for the cost of maybe losing what they had as countryside originally, for factories. They've lived the dream. So the flags are probably already going up saying, are you sure you want to do this? Are you tracking what it is with the data, with these data centers? I think to your point, which I don't have an answer to, but it's also a thought, you're here in a library. Libraries traditionally have been the places for knowledge. We either picked up the scrolls in the libraries or the books in the libraries, and it picked it up. We're now looking at places where we're out of space, and they're digitizing all of those copies of whether it's the parchment, the books, and then they're throwing them out or getting rid of them. And I think the question, which again I don't wish I had a better answer to you other than kind of just saying it's here, is what does that mean when somebody pulls the plug or we lose that data? Are our systems so redundant and reliable that we trust it?
Yeah.
And the reality is, as we found out several different spots, if you think about these clouds or the data center, that's really someone else's data center. It's no different than the computers you have downstairs at the desk. What boots up has to crash down at some point, and then what? That's just truth as far as I can get.
I have a lot of respect for blue collar workers,
Sure.
but I think they will not lose their jobs. You always have to have a person digging a
Yep.
hole, well, with help of machinery, of course, but there's,
And I think you're right, and I think one of the interesting things that, I'm not a plumber, I know, it shocks, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you up front, no he's not. Where do you find a plumber in Huntington?
anywhere, yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
So we've got this whole spot of basically looking at all of those trades, are
And they
now
get
there.
paid $30-40 an hour with no college tuition owed, like $300,000
Well, some of
debt.
that work is, like you use,
Skill.
somebody dig a
Skills.
ditch. If there isn't now, there will be a robotic machine that
Well, yeah, they have a
will
lot
have
of equipment.
someone with the computer
Yep.
programming that to
We
dig
could
the
look at
ditch for
farming, too.
pipelines or
That's a
whatever.
great example, and a lot of, all of those are outfitted. You look at a John Deere tractor, it's outfitted with a GPS unit, it's pulling data in on how they're farming, did they do the crop rotation, and if they get really into it, it's almost the science of farming, where you're looking at, did I put this at the right angle, did I have the right soil, what is this, and how much information is piped into it. And, in some cases, I would say that might be a win for someone, if they're still in a agribusiness or a farming where that's their livelihood and they want to know, am I basically depleting this particular plot on the farm? What do I have to do? And that has huge measure instead of guessing.
Well, again,
It
cost, like in a case like that, is that machinery is gonna cost that farmer a lot of money. Is that, his output, is that gonna be enough to
Yep.
recoup that
And
cost?
that's right here again.
And the other
Wow.
thing, we've got Roombas that do our floors in-house,
Oh, yeah.
inside,
Yeah.
we've got grass cutter mower Roombas that people have for their lawns,
Well, and then the water that you need to keep all these computers from overheating.
Without
Yeah.
destroying the water, cause it's getting muddy, everything
Well,
kind of
it's-
contaminated.
Everything we do is, so, like, the question going back to data centers.
Mhm.
When I say segment, I'm thinking consumer, business, government. Who's driving what of those three? All three are,
So
but
this is-
what's the major driver
So-
of data centers?
And I agree, that's a great question, and I'll even take it a step further. As you hear those, truthfully, there are some folks that will get by without ever having to worry about AI in their life. So the question becomes, is it just our nature of the fear of missing out? This is the next cool thing, and I need to know what it is, and somebody's telling me that I have to do it to be able to tune in. And I really wonder, in some cases, if it's actually just the news and the media and the marketing drive to have one thing build the other as you came in to feed that out. So with the business especially, I think when we think about this idea of product, I need to streamline my business. That's always been, as long as whatever job I work with, folks always wanted to get better at the task. I need to get back more hours in the day. I want to find these things that can help us. I think what's happened is AI is being looked at as the savior. That's the thing that's going to do it for us. And in some cases, the reality is that there's not that tight fit, so they're rushing to go do it, which has generated that we want more skilled workers in the area of AI in this piece, and that's a drive. Whereas if we're going a lot of this process, which actually is the driver to get to those things, to be able to say this is a really solid reason why this is important, so that foundational pieces aren't being packed in. So I think to your question specifically, I think there's a lot of hope from business and industry. I think there's a lot of work being done within the military and the government around AI and what it can do and how it fits in. But at the end of the day, I think that those are the two biggest spots that I would see. And I don't have much more answer other than that. And I think the consumer, the supply and demand is what's there. I think there's the notion of here is the demand, so we need to build a bigger data center. The reason why we want to do that is because we want to entice or have other businesses use these types of these types of tools to build the better mousetrap, and it just keeps building one on top of the other. And we may not know what our own demise is until it's
Yeah.
done. And that's the scary part again of what it's not. Even when we talked about pollution in the 70s, you used to see all of these commercials that came up. The mantra there was, it's not about what you have now, it's about your children or your children's children in the future and how bad that we've left the place. And I think kind of when you're thinking about those data centers, is that notion of, is that the spot that we're really in? And I think for me, I sit on the fence because I really don't know right or wrong or those pieces, and the media does such a great job of taking the thing that's going to sell the most papers, that oftentimes the truth is overlooked on what does this really mean?
Yeah.
And
Well, when we travel,
Mhm.
we see the yard signs, no data center with no data center. I've not seen, I don't think, one sign that says, yay, data center. It's just,
But I think
people want the ability to do all the things that we do, and business people want, government's gonna do what they wanna do anyway.
And I
But
think- go ahead.
I don't know, I'm trying to say that what segment can get it going versus what segment could stop it.
Yeah, I think the other spot too is again, this is really funny because history repeats itself. This is not the first time that we had these conversations, and we've actually had it in our own backyard. This is the same conversation about nuclear power. You know, we want to get cheaper cost of electricity, and we want to put it in place. So what do? We build 3 Mile Island right down the road. I mean, and what happened there? You know, environmental catastrophe almost for those types of things along the way. Was it good? Well, yeah, probably for the time that it was working, and then was it bad? Yeah, it was really bad when it stopped working and stopped doing the things. And I think that that's where we are, to your point, with a lot with this data center of everybody wants the cool thing. They want the answers faster and they want to get it streamlined. Does it mean that we need the data center? Here, what happens if they would walk in and say, hey, let's put a data center down the road for pipes everything out of Racetown? Then it gets really real because that's in our backyard.
Yeah.
That gets back to the fracking.
Because fracking's also the other
And
piece.
I think they're projecting to see the same thing as some fracking, where the jobs created are sort of temporary to build the data center, and then everybody moves out.
Yep. Well, I mean,
Left with
so-
bad water and.
My one of the other cool ones that I'll cite is I had the chance to go out and work and see the Homestake mine in South Dakota, which is still one of the continues operating gold mines in the country. And they basically it's all traced whatever. It's all done with hydraulics, and everybody thought it was great, loved it, until people started to get sick. And all of a sudden they started to find that their slushies that they were doing that was leaking out was all laced with arsenic.
Shit.
Ooh. Then all of a sudden, even though they created jobs, they created a whole industry around it, a sustaining industry because of where they were and what was there, all of a sudden that arsenic piece, that was kind of a really bad gig. And that colored a lot of, they're still in operation after several lawsuits, they're doing their things. They change their processes and what they do. But, this is the same thing again, it's just repeating itself. And I think that's what we're seeing with the data centers. And I wish I could give you a more concrete answer. And I think what you're seeing is many of these larger companies, as you were alluding to, your Microsofts, your kind of folks that are driving those pieces. NVIDIA is another huge one. Because of their processors and what they're doing on the graphics card to help computers, there's a business vested interest in it to try to get there. For us, when you look at from your travels, where do you go to find cheap land that has lots of places that you can build data centers like this that either have water power or solar power that's available? Prime pickings right here.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I don't know. Wish I had more